Nonverbal communication. It is a concept that many people have heard of, but is it something we really understand? Whether we fully realize how much nonverbal communication affects our interactions or not, it has been well established that its effect is unavoidable. In fact, nonverbal communication accounts for 93% of a conversation's meaning, according to many experts in the communication field. Nonverbal communication matters, and it is important to learn more about it in order to better employ and respond to nonverbal cues that are constantly happening around us. From everyday interactions to presidential campaigns, the stakes are high when it comes to nonverbal communication. The pundits and talking heads spend hours breaking down the body language of political candidates, and there have even been studies that have shown how much a candidate's body language can affect their chances in an election. Many others have also studied the different facets of nonverbal communication, the most famous of which is Paul Ekman. Ekman's work is widely regarded within the field of nonverbal communication, as he has devoted many years of his life to studying human emotions and the role they play in our lives. In his years spent traveling the globe, Ekman found that there are 7 universal emotions: surprise, sadness, happiness, fear, disgust, contempt, and anger. According to Ekman, these 7 emotions are expressed in the same way by people all over the globe. In accordance with this study done by the expert, the following footage comes from a local case study of facial expressions on the campus of Andrews University.
How would you define nonverbal communication?
That's okay. It's a good question. We use words to communicate messages, but often the words by themselves don't explain fully what we mean. I give you a practical example. When my wife says, "Well, I guess I'll wash the dishes," that phrase means more than, "Well, I guess I'll wash the dishes." The way she said it, whether or not she rolls her eyes, what she does with the dish soap when she goes to the kitchen, whether or not she stacks the dishes gently and quietly or throws them around a little bit, could tell me that what she's really saying is, "You should have washed the dishes, and I was waiting for you to do that, but you didn't." So a message can be communicated in several different ways, and if we learn how to watch, we can augment the words themselves and often get a better clue about what a person meant by the things they do, how they act, how they stand, the tone of voice, how rapidly they may speak, where the pitch in the voice comes, those things that aren't directly related to words, but they help us to understand the context or the possible meaning behind the words.
Do you think you encode messages more regularly in a nonverbal way versus a strictly verbal way?
I'm not sure exactly what I do, but I attended 2 days ago a workshop on retirement. I still have a few years to go, but it seemed to make sense to go and listen to what this gentleman from the General Conference had to say about retirement. And during the break, I went up to ask him a question, and without even thinking, I crossed my arms. I had my arms crossed in front of my chest, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Have I offended you? You got your arms crossed. You're putting distance between us." And I had not even thought about what that might mean. So I think I'm somebody who tries to pay attention to how I come across to people, and I think that I try harder now than I have in the past. In my office, I have 2 desks. I haven't been in this office very long, so I'm still getting to know it. And one of the things I discovered during my first year in the office is that if I conducted conferences with students where I sat on one side of the desk and they sat on the other, it didn't feel comfortable. So I started to sit at the second desk, which is a table and requires that we sit side by side. And I think it makes an impact on how the student thinks I'm thinking about them. I think I look more interested. I can lean into the paper. I can actually see it better than when I'm looking at it upside down. So all of the implications are that I'm trying to pay attention, and I want the student to know that I'm paying attention. So where I sit and how I sit makes an impact, something that I've discovered. So I think that's something I do consciously think about.
Do you think it is important to understand other nonverbal cultural communication styles?
Well, yes, I do. Considering that we work at Andrews where there are so many different cultures, it's important to know the kinds of things that could affect the way other people hear us. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you watch the news and pay attention to pictures that have Hillary Clinton in them, she will always, when she's visiting the heads of state for Arab countries, for instance, she always sits in a very careful way. She won't cross her legs. Something for you to watch for. Because if you cross your legs, you might expose the sole of your foot, which is considered an insult in some cultures. You might have known that gestures that we use in our culture to indicate okay or you're doing well, like a thumbs up or an okay symbol with your thumb and finger together, are considered rude in other cultures. So you want to know what those different gestures mean. A really practical example here at Andrews, you know that I work in the Writing Center. We have a lot of Asian students. And when they come into the Writing Center, they will nod their heads and let you know that they're listening carefully. That doesn't mean they understand you. And so it's important to follow up. The gestures indicate you've been successful, you've communicated, but maybe you haven't. So you can't always rely on them.
How can nonverbal communication affect relationships?
Well, I think if I'm not paying attention to what my wife says, I might misinterpret, and I could actually do something that causes difficulties that I didn't mean. And I'll give you an example. We have this lovely piano that sits at her parents' house. It belongs to our son, but he isn't here to play it. So last night I said, I think I'll go practice the piano. Grandpa Jim isn't here. I'm going to go practice the piano for a while. She said, sure, go practice the piano. The way she said it, the words said, you have my permission to go play, but the way she said go practice the piano clearly indicated she had something else on her mind. And because I was listening to that, I added the second question, is there anything that you need to accomplish this evening? Was there anything you're working on this evening? And it turned out she had something she needed to do. And I stayed by to help. And I'm glad I picked up on that. I probably would have had her frustrated with me if I had left, even though I had permission. But it was important to be listening for the other message.
As we've seen, an unspoken message can manifest itself in many forms. Nonverbal communication can change and clarify a message immensely. Whether it is a hand gesture, a smile, or simply a person's posture, our nonverbal cues communicate more than words ever will. The complexities and intricacies of these topics may seem a bit daunting at first, but the opportunities and rewards that effective nonverbal communication provides are immense, if only we will learn to understand what is not being said.